Namaste. The light and love of the divine in me honors and greets the light and love of the divine in each and every one of you. Thank you for being here this morning. And we've been checking in with people to see how the weather is and what's going on with people. And I think the consensus is that life is good. The weather is beautiful. Spring is here, and it's going to be a very, very special day. Who we are is we are the Awakening Way spiritual community. And, Frank and I were talking about this just yesterday, that we don't call ourselves a church. We don't call ourselves a center. We call ourselves a community. And with all that community means, that our focus is on people. Our focus is on being together as a group of people, like-minded people, spiritually minded people, loving people, that gather together with a purpose, with a goal to spiritually evolve. And Awakening Ways is all of the different ways that we can awaken. So if you chose to be here this morning, we're so glad that you're part of our community, because that's all you have to do to be part of our community is just show up, and you're in it, you're as it. We follow in the New Thought spiritual tradition of Dr. Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes was a person who was able to take the basic foundations of so many spiritual traditions out there in the world, and take the core pieces, the key teachings of these spiritual traditions, and kind of fold them into the teaching that we have now, which focuses on these, what we call the golden threads of truth, that have found their way and wind their way through all of these great spiritual traditions. There are many of them, but basically we look at one life, and we look at one love and peace and joy, and the reality and the truth that we cannot be separate from that spiritual presence, whatever name we call it, God, Spirit, Divine, Allah, whatever name we use. We can't be separate from it. And this is kind of, for many people, a new idea that they are part of, not separate from, the living God. And so we offer classes and meditations and teachings and gatherings and music, all designed for all of us to remember and to connect with that vibration, that reality of who and what we are, this beautiful spiritual emanation of that one life. So people have come here from so many different spiritual traditions. And what we find is that when they hear the truth, when they hear what we have to offer here in such a positive way, they kind of want to hang around. They kind of want to stick around. And so if you're here for the first time, we especially want to welcome you. We have people from all different faiths, and we know that whatever it is that brought all of us here this morning, and wherever we go when this session is over this morning, for right now, for this perfect moment in time, welcome home. We've been waiting for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. This is going to be a beautiful morning. We love it when Timber comes. He always offers such deep and meaningful messages for us all, and so we feel honored and blessed that he is going to be speaking this morning. I'd like to begin, as we always do, with a reading from Dr. I'm sorry, we have the neighbor. Can you hear the noise in the background? Can you hear any noise? Yeah. Frank is out trying to get the person next door to turn off the lawnmower. But that's okay, because it's all part of life. It's all the sounds of the world. So we'll just incorporate that into our meditation this morning. And I like to begin with a reading from Dr. Holmes. Listen to this beautiful message that he has for us. First of all, just allow your eyes to softly close so that you can receive this message in an open, receptive place within. So if you're comfortable, just allow your eyes to softly close and just take a couple of deep, deep breaths, deep, relaxing breaths. And bring yourself to this moment, to this place. And allow yourself to just rest in that place. And Ernest Holmes says this: at the center of my being is peace. That peace that is felt in the coolness of early evening, after workers have turned from their labor, and the first star that shines in the soft light of a translucent sky. In this peace that holds me so gently, I feel strength and protection from all fear, all anxieties. It is the peace of God, and underneath it all, I feel the love of the Holy Presence. As I become more conscious of this love, all lack, all fear, all that is false slips away as mists fade in the morning sunshine. I am one with deep, abiding peace, and I know that all is well. And from this recognition, from this acknowledgement, from this place of deep knowing, we open to accept and embody this peace, the truth of this peace that passes understanding, the peace that dwells within us, the peace that is our very being, that still point from which our life rises. We feel that deep abiding peace with each and every breath. And we know that it is the indwelling presence that is living and moving and having its being within us as us in this very moment. That sense of well-being, that sense of knowing that all is truly well, fills our minds, our hearts, allows our bodies to rest. And we have that sense that this day is unfolding in such a magnificent way, that the words of timber move through us, through the very cells of our bodies, lifting us, stirring within us that knowing, that truth, that peace, that very life of spirit itself. And so we open and we say yes to that. We say yes to the music that fills our hearts with such joy. Yes to the presence of all of us here, gathered together in this one gathering, right here and one right now. And so knowing that everything is at peace and everything is moving as it should, I just let it all be. And knowing it is so, I simply say, and so it is. Amen.
I like that we started by talking about being receptive. A lot of the challenges, many of the challenges we encounter and the problems people tell me they have with meditation and whatnot stems from thinking that we need to learn to control our thoughts. And they say, well, there's certain thoughts keep popping into my mind and I try to stop them. And of course, energy flows where attention goes. And so the more we try to stop them, the more they take over. And I don't think that we can stop thoughts from coming up, but there's a certain barrier, if you would, of allowing them to come up, but not allowing them to go in, if that makes sense. And I believe and excuse me if this is so colloquial of a comparison, but being such a visual person, the image that comes to mind of allowing certain things to come up but not allowing them to come in reminds me of when I was younger in my 20s. It was the height of the 90s club scene where everyone was going clubbing and partying and raves. And so I spent many of my nights either standing in line with cash in hand and my ID to pay a cover charge so I can get out of the cold and onto the dance floor at a dance club, or cutting to the front of the line where the bouncer, typically a very large Samoan guy, recognizes you and smiles at you and lets you in because you're on the ever elusive guest list that you got onto because you're a friend of the manager or the bartender or the DJ. And young and broke, but addicted to bass, we did everything we could to secure a spot on that guest list. Because in our eyes, the bouncer in the front at each local club was right up there with St. Peter protecting the pearly gates of heaven, where the gods were spinning records and nothing else mattered. And so, as such, the bouncers were to be respected because they had the authority, the power, and the muscle to kick you out or let you in. And I'm telling you this because, silly as it may sound, um, I picture there's a bouncer in my head deciding which thoughts are free to join the party and which have to stand outside, and which are banned for life. And I later learned that, unfortunately, kind of bouncers are not just making sure people on the guest list get to come in. They were also responsible for making sure the male to female ratio inside the club was balanced. And in some extreme cases, bouncers only allowed the pretty people inside the club. And desperate to get in, some people resorted to very desperate measures to end up on that guest list. And there was, again, I apologize in advance that this is a very silly colloquial explanation, but there was a song called DJ Girl. And again, I don't know what the equivalent is. I know that when you're speaking in certain crowds and you say, I'm aging myself, you're letting people know just how much older you are than people think you are. But I don't know what the equivalent to that is when you're saying this and you're actually disclosing how much younger you are than the rest of the people here today. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now by referring to this really silly, totally stupid song called DJ Girl, which was a conversation between a club bouncer, the big guy in the front, and a very determined groupie. She shows up like carrying records and she's like, I'm with the DJ. I'm with the DJ. Okay. Like, just let me in, like, do you think I dress like this for fun? Like, just really trying to get in. And that's how I picture the ego trying to get over, like, just really determined to get into that club. And it was a very dumb but hilarious song for those of us who literally saw this play out of people trying to get into the club. But the bouncer just stuck to the names on that guest list and or whatever criteria he was given each night. The reason I'm bringing this up is I think that we need that guy, that bouncer in our heads to keep certain thoughts cravings and our egos from sneaking in. People think meditation is about not having certain thoughts, but in my experience, we can't control who shows up at the party, but with a bouncer, we get to decide who gets to hit the dance floor, if that makes any sense. If you're not a club kid and all of this is way over your head, imagine airport security deciding what's allowed on a plane and what isn't, or in what quantity. Like, we all have baggage, but if someone shows up with too much baggage, more than what's allowed, then they either pay extra for that extra baggage or they have to leave it behind. So whatever metaphor works for you, I think it's important that we get in touch with the bouncer within us, with the security guard, or the ticket agent, someone, who controls kind of like what thoughts are productive, not destructive, and those that get to stay and those that have to essentially stand outside. Kind of like trying to sneak in, if you know those apartment buildings that you have to buzz someone in, and someone always try to sneak in past someone who got buzzed in. I think it's really important that we be vigilant and never slack, because once you let certain thoughts in, it's very difficult to get them out. Again, I don't know if that visual works, but I'm just sharing with you what works for me in my head. Because in all seriousness, I think we need to write up a guest list and stand guard, so to speak. I often talk so much about setting boundaries with other people, and then honoring those boundaries. But we need to set very clear parameters for ourselves and not allow expired beliefs, hostile opinions, destructive, vindictive visions, and distractions to live, rent free in our heads. Or to keep with the, the dance metaphor, to not allow those thoughts to mingle with all the other thoughts in our heads, because they infect them. And they get in there without even paying a cover charge, they just kind of sneak in. So I think, or if we go with that other criteria, they're not pretty enough to occupy space in our minds. And I know that I offer these really playful visuals, and it's only because they really work for me, and I use them on myself. That way I'm not taking them so seriously, I'm not so rigid, I'm not demonizing certain thoughts. I just know that some are welcome, some are permanently on the guest list and they can always come in, but others have acted up so much in the past that they've just been kicked out. And some I think are just forever banned. They're on, I think it was the 86 list, I think is what it's called. When someone's 86, they're like not allowed for life. And it's really good to recognize them. And as a bouncer, to see which ones are using a fake ID, trying to sneak in. I don't know. There's this really playful, light-hearted, non-rigid way to identify which thoughts are very conducive to the path we want to lead, and which are just outdated from before we've decided to perhaps get on our spiritual path, and which, that just to not beat ourselves up, because I think that's a pattern and a habit that we get into. And I think we need to stop being victims of our own thoughts. Let's be our own cheerleaders instead, life coaches and personal trainers. My point is that we get to decide. The ego is kind of like that annoying DJ girl, just always trying to get into the club, uninvited, using different disguises, fake IDs. And I think it's important to not be fooled by it. The role that you play in your life as the gatekeeper or security guard is one of the most important jobs you will have. You need that bouncer. You need you. And so, again, as you know, I'd love to open it for discussion, but I think it's really important that we recognize our role, that we don't play a victim, and that we embrace that responsibility to not beat ourselves up or demonize certain thoughts from entering, but saying, you can all stand in line, but I'm not going to let all of you in. And I think that's a much gentler approach, if that makes sense, than beating ourselves up for certain thoughts. Well, I keep having these thoughts pop up. Well, the thoughts can pop up. That's totally fine. They can show up and stand in line, but we need that security guard to not let them in. We've used that metaphor before, and I think I've mentioned it in my book about an old Sufi practice of imagining a security guard in your throat that determines what words get to go out. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? But I also think we can use that security guard of sorts of what we allow in. So we hear a thought, we hear an opinion, we read an article, but we pause before we take it on and go, I've read this, it becomes part of our internal, encyclopedia. Go, wait a minute, is this information, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Is it kind to me? Am I making sense? Yeah, I know you're all muted, so it's a really kind of moot question to ask you, but I am looking for, are we going to start meeting in person soon? What's happening with that? Because I need to be in the room with all of you, just understanding, because I'm staring at myself. Maybe I can change that.
Yeah, you can put the gallery on.
Gallery view. There you, well, I know, but when you guys highlight bead, it's just for us. Hi, guys.
Yeah. So we are planning on, we will be going back, probably, we're looking at sometime early summer, like June, maybe.
Okay.
Middle of June, maybe the 1st of July, something like that. But
Okay.
It's imminent. It's imminent. I do have a question though.
Yeah.
I love the metaphors. I love them all. I just love it. The security guard and the bouncer. But what happens for us, what happens for me personally, and we have people come to us with this, is that the thoughts come, and of course they come at the worst possible time. You're already feeling, yucky, and then it just snowballs. And so it's kind of too late. They've already crashed the party, right? So what ideas or strategies, do you have any ideas for what you can do when you've kind of messed up and maybe, let it go too far?
Yeah, it's funny. The first thing that came to mind when you said they come at the worst time, I'm like, no, that's the best time for them to come up, in the sense that we don't get what we want, we get what we need. And so when that happens, I often question, like they said, you said they crashed the party, and it's like, okay, now what? And to me, when I take all of that into consideration, the thoughts showed up, they crashed the party, it seems like the worst time. That's when I pause and go, why am I so insistent on staying at this party? Like, clearly it's been infiltrated by, a groupie that, or something changed at midnight, and this is no longer feels like a safe space. And oftentimes I find, well, then why am I so insistent? I think the ego comes in that regard, like, but it's my party, this is my space, you're not welcome here, like insisting on trying, can we get someone to kick them out, instead of saying, maybe I need to bow out, maybe I needed to go home at midnight. You know what I mean? Like, there's this idea of, I was listening to a moth story the other day, and this may or may not apply. This guy has an Airbnb, and he said, my backyard has like, 30 feet of grass or whatever, and then there's a small lake, and there's these swans. And the problem was, the swans are beautiful, but they're extremely hostile. And so, as an Airbnb host, you always want to get really good reviews, because then you become a super host and all this stuff. But what happened was, these swans hissed at one of my guests. And in the worst case scenario, we got a 2-star review saying, the swans hissed at my daughter, very scared, didn't feel safe staying there anymore. So he contacted the city, and he's like, I've got these swans. And the city is like, well, you need to order some coyote urine online and spray it around your yard, because that will deter the swans from staying there. So he tried the coyote urine, which smelled horrible, and it was just a mess. And it didn't work. and then called the city again. And the city's like, well, you have the right to shoot the swans. And then he got into this whole idea, like, what? Like, they're just upset because I'm trying to displace them. And the city's like, well, technically it's your land, so you have the right to do it. And he's like, okay, I don't want to get into this Middle East, Palestine, Israeli war here about who has the right to be here. Like, whose land is this? Like, the swans were here before me. So it's like, what am I trying to do? And so he realized, instead of trying to kick out the swans and he just incorporated the swans into his Airbnb listing. He took a picture of them. He said, the land comes with swans. Here are some true facts about the swans, and that way, because the problem wasn't the swans. The problem was the Airbnb guests who tried to walk up to the swans instead of respecting them. So now his listing is like, it's called Swan Lake, it's just like, this is it. And it's not about, like I said earlier, it's not about demonizing the thoughts, but it's asking, because we tend to cling to, it has to be done my way. And this is when I want to think about this. And these thoughts are not allowed. We're trying to control so much rather than allowing what comes up and go, what is my place here? And if the DJ is spinning this kind of music tonight, do I call the city and complain? Or maybe this is not the right time for me to go. This is not the right, I don't know if I'm making any sense trying to use those metaphors, but sometimes we are so insistent, we are so white knuckled about our way of doing things that we think that what's in our way is the problem, that those thoughts are the problem, rather than maybe I'm trying too hard to control it. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but sometimes the thoughts are not the problem. Our attempt to control and decide and dictate, that's the problem. And those thoughts show up, what you said, at the worst possible time. No, this is your lesson to learn right now. And we think, well, that's not what I wanted to do today, but it's not up to you. Like when I was at my teacher's place and they were coming over, and I'm like, this is such a great opportunity to ask these guys who have spent 30 years meditating in a cave in India. And I'm like, oh, what a great opportunity. We're sitting around a campfire. It felt biblical to ask these old sages, for advice. But the whole day I was terrified because I was staying in this organic farm and they have these huge spiders. And even though I'm supposed to be at this retreat, I felt terrified. I was in a fetal position on the papasan chair all day. It just scared. I'm like thinking maybe I need to cut this retreat short because I feel so uncomfortable in what is supposed to be a relaxing, very holistic retreat. And so my friend said, they're coming over for dinner tonight. Why don't you ask them about the spiders? I said, are you kidding me? I have this great opportunity to tap into their wisdom. And you want me to ask them about my fear of bugs? And she's like, well, that's what's coming up for you. So that's what I mean about, I was so white knuckled. Like, I'm not going to talk to them about bugs. Like, I need to talk to them about these, thoughts that I've had for years. And she's like, no, this is what's coming up. Talk to them about that. And luckily I did. And they offered me this idea of naming the insects, the spiders. And then it no longer became an intruder. It became a teacher, if that makes sense. So the spiders and the bee that came in, it was like, oh, it's Maya the bee. And so I know I'm talking about insects, but I'm talking about thoughts also. And we tend to demonize them. And my friend has a practice of demonizing, naming her demons, so to speak. And so if we're prone to anger, if we're prone to jealousy, instead of making them intruders, we go, okay, let's name that anger, jealousy, whatever it is. And that way we honor them and we look at their ID and we go, oh, I see you, but you're not welcome to this party. Or, you're not invited to this dinner. We'll talk later or something. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to use all the different metaphors. But the idea is to acknowledge them, because I think the ego and all of these thoughts and demons, they don't want to take over us. They just want to be acknowledged. Like that little kid who says, mom, 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 mom. What? Nothing. Just acknowledge me, and when you do, and you're like, I see you, like, okay, carry on. And does that make sense?
Well, would you deconstruct this whole mess in your head, or would you just kind of say, okay, well, why, what is happening here? Do I really need to stay here? Do I need to just walk away? What do you do if if you haven't practiced this before,
Hmm.
and you're not familiar?
Yeah, you're trying to figure out, is this my cue to bow out, or is
Yeah,
this my cue to sit with the
right.
discomfort?
Exactly, exactly. And
Got
if
it.
I choose to sit with the discomfort, what am I sitting with? Am I just sitting with this whole ball of stuff? Uh, or do I need to deconstruct it and say, what is the core? What's, you
Mm,
get carried away with that. You can get carried away with the thoughts
Yeah.
about the thoughts, if you know.
yeah.
A rabbit
You know,
hole.
So I think that's what's wonderful about, first of all, setting a timer for your meditation, because like you said, you can get absolutely carried away. I think when I assume the role of a student, everything and everyone is then viewed as a teacher. But if I assume the role of the one in control, and so little is under our control, then a lot of stuff frustrates me and annoys me. And that's what I like about the timer. Like for 10 minutes, I'm going to allow, thoughts. Let's say for 10 minutes, the bouncer is going to say, okay, come forward, show me your ID, and I don't need to get caught up in, why did fear show up? Why did jealousy show up? Well, I don't need to get behind the why and just go, okay, these are things are showing up, and I can spend an hour deconstructing the thoughts about the thoughts. But I can set a timer and go, okay, maybe I will for 10 minutes allow to think, why is jealousy here? What is, and I did a podcast episode about the nonviolent communication approach to, you know, um, jealousy, for example, or any feeling is there to present us with, it's telling us that there's an unmet need. So if jealousy shows up, like, why is jealousy here? Well, what is the unmet need behind the jealousy? Because it wouldn't show up if I felt secure in my relationship, if I felt very healthy and at peace with it. Jealousy wouldn't show up. So if it's showing up, there's an unmet need. I need a little more validation. I need a little more affirmation. If fear shows up, well, why is fear here? Well, maybe because I haven't been practicing my faith and my trust enough. What is it here to teach me? But I won't be able to learn that if I think of myself as the teacher or the one in control. I have to assume the role of the student. But again, it's a timer situation. I will set a timer, meditate for 10 minutes, and when the timer goes off, that's it. The door is closed. No one's allowed back in. So that's how I allow whoever wants to get in line to get in line. But using that metaphor again of the fake ID, so jealousy is the fake ID. The real identity is insecurity. Well, why am I feeling insecure? Where is that? And that, because those are the things that, when I learn how to communicate the unmet need, not the feel, because we would express our anger, we would express our fear, we would express our jealousy, but that doesn't get to the core of it. The beauty of meditation is you allow their true identity to show up. Am I making sense? About the point of meditation is not to spin out of control about the thoughts, is to allow their true identity to show up. But again, with a timer in mind, so that we get to understand, because I don't think any feeling is negative. It's all there for a reason. That anger is there to present us with an unmet need. And it may be an unmet need for feeling safe, secure, heard, respected. And then I go, well, what is that about? And I allow it, I give it just enough space. So that's the tricky part, is to give it a platform, but only for a certain amount of time. Just like in the moth stories, you get up to tell your story, but you're only given 5 minutes, and then the buzzer goes off and that's all you get. And I love that sense of everyone gets a chance to, it's kind of like, what do you call it? The talking stick, when you're sitting in a group, like you can raise your hand and speak, and you're given it's either a stick, or some people use a seashell or what. Am I making sense here? And that way you're not carried away. You're saying, okay, go ahead and speak your piece, so to speak. But when the buzzer goes off, then you pass it on. And that way no one thought talks over another. Now I feel like we're all over the place, and I kind of want to bring it back to the bouncer in our heads and allowing him to, and I think in Buddhism it's called discernment, not a judgment. It's not about judging. That's a negative thought. That's a positive thought. Is this conducive to what I'm trying to accomplish? And I'm not suggesting, even some of those thoughts are very helpful, but that's not the right time for them. Like time, place, circumstance, like thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch. That's an important thought, but not right now. Like, this is not what, the next 30 minutes, I'm here to meditate on this. I will meditate on lunch when the buzzer goes off. So it's a way to not, I don't know, because it's control, but it's not control. It's just, it's discernment. I don't know if you can come up with another word that isn't so harsh, that isn't so controlling as, I don't know, like that's why I said the guest list is really important. The guest list is what we get to decide, who is allowed inside, who is not allowed until they're 21, and who is banned for life. Am I making sense, or am I just making things more confusing? Some people are giving a thumbs up, some people are shaking their heads. And I think we just need to get in touch and familiar with the bouncer, because many of us don't even have a bouncer. It's the door's just open. Come on in, thoughts, take over. And it's just like, wait. We need some discernment. You can stay unmuted and jump in, because otherwise I will just spin.
Okay. So
Go ahead.
the metaphor that I use for it goes back to when I was young, which is, showing my age. They used to have dance contests where everyone would be on the floor at the same time. And there would be a certain point where you would get tapped out, where the judge would come around and just tap you on the shoulder, and you had to leave the dance floor. You could stay in the club, but you had to get off the dance floor at that point in time. And for me, that's what I try to do with my thoughts. I'll let them be there, but reaches a point where I have to tap them out and say, okay.
I love that. That is such beautiful. And I think there was even a TV show, right, where they allowed people to dance, but then you're right, like you get tapped out. You've got to get out of the spotlight. Like that move you thought was cool, not so much. Like
exactly.
And you can stay. It's kind of like now the saying is, the club is closed. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's kind of the same thing. And so I really, really like your visual of just getting tapped out. And so when fear shows up and all of that, like, I get why you're here, but this is not conducive with the kind of life I want to lead. This is not conducive with the kind of conversation I'm trying to have right now. When you're trying to have a discussion with someone and all of a sudden you feel yourself raising your voice, that's when you've lost the argument already. Don't raise your voice, improve your argument. Because you're not going to change someone else's mind by throwing your opinion at them. You can't give by throwing. And so that's a really good, like, oh, they just crossed the line. Use sports thing. It's a referee. You just created, that was a foul. You can try to get the ball. You can try to do, but the moment you do a foul, you get tapped out. So use whatever metaphor. The point is, we are not to play victims of, well, I can't help yes, you can, you know what I mean? You may not be able to help. Oh, that thought entered my head. Okay. But it's up to you whether you allow it to stay on the dance floor. You can tap it out and go, your time is out. Like, that's not. And the more times you do that, the less likely, like, you may see fear or anger, like, inching closer to the spotlight. And you go, I see you. But it's kind of like that the two wolves, the more you listen to the God within, the louder that voice becomes, the quieter the ego gets. But the more often you let the ego dance, the more he's going to be like, oh yeah, I'm it, give me, start tipping me. I'm going to, like all of a sudden he's the main show. The ego is the go-go dancer in the little, and everyone's the, again, I'm aging, not the opposite of aging myself here. But that's the beautiful, find whatever metaphor works for you. That's why I even threw in the airport security, like you can pack it, you can bring it to the airport, but there needs to be someone there that says this, not so much, or we allow it, but no more than 3 ounces of it. That, you know what I mean? Like, I really think that discernment is what many of us lack. The doors either open or close. And it's like, we need another filter in place. Does that, and get in touch with that, and without so much rigidity of like a police officer or, yeah, Maureen, go ahead.
Maureen, you have your hand
Maureen,
up and you're
your hand is
muted.
up. Yeah, you're muted.
Unmute.
Here we go.
Okay. Hi, Timber. Thanks
Hi.
for taking my question or comment, I should say. But one time you talked about, it was either on a Sunday morning or it was on your podcast, and you talked about core values. And that really hit me in a good way. And I thought, well, you've got to get to work on this. And so I've started writing down my core values, and it's a process, but that keeping my core values in mind when I get in a sticky situation, what might be a sticky situation, like Dr. Terry was talking about, I try to revert back to my core values. And ask myself, is it going to add to my life experience and my core values, or is it not? And that's kind of a regulator for me as to what I let in and what I let out. So
you're having a difficult time in the heat of the moment, so to speak, to stick to the core values. So I can share a story with you guys very briefly that my teacher has shared with me as a method to, because it's nice to have. So imagine, when I mentioned the core values, I mentioned, when you think of a company or a restaurant or a church or a community, we often have these as our vision statement, our mission statement. These are our values. And it's really nice when you build the website to list those things there. But what I'm hearing you say, Maureen, is that in the moment, that's when it's hard to keep the core values. So like, if let's say a company says, one of our values is to be really conscious of our environment, and just make really conscious decisions about recycling or whatnot. Okay, great. So that's really beautiful to put on the website. But on a random Tuesday, you're like, hey, we're out of printer paper. We need to order more. And you get onto the website to order printer paper, and you're like, well, there's so many choices. And you're like, oh, well, let's go with the cheapest one. That is when we need our core values and go, wait a minute, because if you choose the cheapest one, what is behind your decision? And oftentimes you're like, actually, it's fear. It's I don't have enough money to afford the more expensive one. Why is the more expensive one more expensive? Am I letting fear now make my decision for me? Or am I letting my values? Because if I let my values make a decision, then I pause before I click add to cart and I go, wait a minute, what are the other? And some of the paper is actually made from recycled paper. Oh, this is great. This is more in line with my values. That way, what we say, what we think, and what we do are all in harmony. Because what we don't realize is that if we I'm just going to buy the cheapest paper possible, then that decision is made from actually fear, from a place of lack rather than abundance. And we're letting that not enoughness mentality make our decisions for us. So we think, well, this is our values, but in reality, in action, we're not in harmony with our values. We say one thing and we're doing another. We're using a fake ID. We pretend that we're all about the environment, but when it comes down to the decision, and so here's the story I want to share with you guys. Am I going over time here, guys, or can I jump into the story? She's like, yeah, you're going a little bit over.
A little bit over, but that's okay.
Oh boy.
Tell the story and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. All right. So here is the tool I use to make sure that my core values are not just in theory. They're not just on the website. They're not just something I recite to myself on the meditation cushion. They are in my back pocket all day, every day. I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible. It's a visual. Stick with me. So I'm going to share it with you the way my teacher shared it with me. In India, and tell me if I've shared this with you before, they have shuks. They're like these outdoor, I think the closest thing we can relate it to is an outdoor farmer's market. Okay, so imagine a market, San Luis Obispo farmer's market, okay? But during the day in India, outdoors, dirt floor. It's a red dirt, blue sky, warm weather, vendors on both sides, booths, tables, all that stuff, right? You're visualizing this. We're all good. We're all in that market. And the vendors are selling beautiful, like colorful saris, you know, fabric and just piles of spices and fruits and vegetables. And it's just this lively, warm, breezy, incredible day. And lots of people and lots of stuff going on. And they have these parades that go through the market. And this being India, in the parades, they have elephants. And the elephants are covered in beautiful fabric and bells and all this stuff. And the problem was when the elephants walked through the market, every time the elephants saw bananas or mangoes or anything, they just grab it with their trunk and shove it in their mouth, right? Sounds wonderful. However, did I share this with you guys before already? No? Awesome. All right. So imagine this elephant going through the market. And I apologize for speaking so quickly, but like this is a great story, a visual. And the elephant goes through and they're breaking things and they're causing complete chaos because every time they see something that looks good, they're grabbing, reaching for it, and it's just breaking, and they're using, you know, inventory that's harming the vendors and all this stuff. So they tried to figure out, okay, how can we have the market and the parade and the elephants, but none of the chaos? And they realized that if you give the elephants a stick of bamboo to bite down and chew on, they will walk through that entire market. And it doesn't matter if someone's selling mangoes or bananas. They're not going to reach for it with their trunk and shove it in their mouth because they can't. They already have something in their mouth. They're chewing happily on their bamboo. Now, if the guy next to the elephant at one point notices that the elephant is reaching for something, then he knows, oh, he must have dropped his bamboo stick. So he picks up the bamboo, give it back to the elephant. The elephant can walk through the market without being distracted. That's how my teacher taught me what a mantra is. Most people think a mantra is a chant in some foreign exotic language that you repeat to yourself while you're on the meditation cushion, going Om Mani Padme Hum Om, and it is, but that's not how my teacher taught me what it is. He said it's a bamboo stick. It's a thought you keep in the forefront of your mind that you bite down on, that you keep yourself grounded in your values, whatever it is, so that it doesn't matter what other people are doing on the sides. You're not so attracted to the mango booth or aversion to the guy selling fish because it smells so bad, and you want to go to the lady selling flowers because you're like, as long as you've got your grounding thought, you can walk through life, through the market gracefully, knowing that when you're done walking through that market, you will get the mangoes and the alfalfa and the bananas, but you've got to walk gracefully through life without letting what people are doing or selling or what smells and the delicious distract you, because that's the thing. So we talked about the metaphor of the bouncer and the distraction and the airlines and the security. It's like we need that bamboo stick, those core values, not just in theory, not just on the website, but in practice. So when you're at the store and there's this really colorful packaging, you're like, wait a minute, are the ingredients in this food in line with my values? Because this sounds delicious, but is it harmonious with the kind of person I want to be, with the kind of life I want to lead? Because you can't say I want to be healthy and then buy something that is detrimental to your health, because then you're letting your ego make your decisions for you rather than the God within. You're that elephant walking through the market, and every time something smells good, you're letting it be destructive rather than constructive. I apologize for it being so quick, because I'm sure that's a discussion in and of itself, but thank you guys so much for allowing me to share the tools that have enriched my own life so much, that I'm hoping through visuals, silly as they may be, can really help.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Sorry for going over time.
No worries.
just have fun. Yippee! Some folks are watching TV on the couch. Others like to run a marathon. Everyone's connected, though they're not the same. 'Cause every life has meaning. Every life has meaning. Every life has meaning. It's all about love. Gandhi said it. All about love. Buddha said it. All about love. Jesus said it. All about love. Krishna said it. Earth said it. The Beatles said it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh. Some folks trust in spirit, others struggle in doubt. Some folks hoard possession, all mine. Some just do without. I'm fine. Everyone's connected, though they're not the same. 'Cause every life has meaning. 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 Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Karen and Jimmy. And thank you, Timber. That was wonderful. I really appreciate it. It's always so great to have you come to us and speak to us, because it's different from what we usually hear. And it has a lot of meaning for all of us, I know. I want to remind everyone that Awakening Ways exists because of your tithes. And so, and the tithes have been doing really well. We're in quite good shape, considering that we haven't seen anybody in person in over a year now. But if you'd like to support us, remember that you can simply go to our website and you can click on PayPal and pay us that way, or you can send us a check to Awakening Ways at 7350 El Camino Real, Suite 102, Atascadero, California, 93422. A reminder also that we are a community that believes powerfully in the power of prayer. So if you'd like to have a prayer done for anything going on in your lives, and you want our whole prayer team, all 12 of us, to do it, then please send us an email, put prayer request in the subject line, send it to awakeningways@thegrid.net, and the whole prayer team will be praying for you for a week. Okay? And then if you need it for longer than that, you can just let us know. Also a reminder that Jan Lynch's Divine Flow workshop will be coming up in next month, May 12th to 19th.
May 12th and May.
May 12th and May 19th. And there's only 4 seats left. So if you want to do it, you need to sign up right now and pay for it. And if you signed up, but you haven't paid for it and you want to save your seat and not have somebody else get it, then you need to pay now. And of course, you need the, and you can either do that with PayPal again, or you can do it by sending a check to Awakening Ways. If you haven't gotten the book yet, then the Divine Flow of Abundance is the name of the book. Then leave a message, call the Awakening Ways office, or send us an email, and Jan will get back to you. She has all the books. Also, a reminder that Susan Jones is going to be here next week to speak, and it's always a joy to have Susan speak. I think that's all the business we need to do. So let's just take a moment and go back into that consciousness that Timber so wonderfully took us to and kept us in for that period of time. And give thanks. I give thanks for all that Spirit has brought us today, for the wisdom speaking through Timber, for the glorious music that comes through Jimmy. Jimmy's creative mind produces such incredible masterpieces of New Thought music, and we're so blessed to have him, so blessed to have our musicians. We give thanks for that. Knowing that each of us is not a fragment of God, is not a part of God, but each one of us has within us all that God is. We are God having human experiences. Knowing that that is true, let us walk, and I know we will walk through our lives this week from that pure place of spirit, ever asking ourselves in every interaction, what's the most loving thing I can do right now? And if I find myself getting angry, what is it that I fear? What is it that can overcome that divinity that I am? And knowing that the answer is nothing. Nothing can overcome that divinity. I walk through life in peace. I know that this is true for each of us as we go through our lives this week. And for that, I give thanks. And as we close this morning, we do it in great joy and gratitude. And we say, and so it is.